When an advanced alien species stumbles upon Earth, they assume humans are just another primitive species ripe for conquest. They deploy their invasion forces, only to realize far too late that they should have done their research first. Because humans aren't just survivors. They're the apex predators of adaptation, warfare, and pure, unrelenting stubbornness. As their fleets crumble, their generals fall into despair, and their AI overlords crash from sheer confusion, one question echoes through their networks. Why didn't we research these creatures first? Chapter 1. First Contact, Final Mistake. The Zx'thra Imperium had conquered over 100 worlds. Their fleet, a vast collection of dreadnoughts, carriers, and planetary siege ships, left civilizations shattered in their wake. When their long-range scouts detected a small, relatively primitive planet on the outer rim of a minor spiral arm, they barely hesitated. Earth was classified as a Category C civilization, technologically limited, politically fractured, and utterly insignificant. It would be an easy conquest. Grand strategist Zx'thra sneered at the intelligence reports. These creatures call themselves humans. They still use projectile-based weaponry, their space forces are laughable, and their biology is inefficient. We shall subjugate them in a single planetary cycle. The invasion fleet materialized on the outskirts of the Sol system. An armada of 300 warships surged forward, dark shapes blotting out the light of distant stars. Their primary dreadnought, unyielding Dominion, entered a stable orbit over Earth, scanning for signs of resistance. Begin the planetary bombardment, Zx'thra ordered. Target major population centers. The first strikes rained down on the planet, but something strange happened. Before their weaponry could reach its targets, Earth's orbital defense network, primitive but vast, intercepted a shocking percentage of the attacks. Worse, the humans' response time was unprecedented. Within minutes, a swarm of automated missiles surged toward the fleet. The Zx'thra had anticipated retaliation, but they had underestimated the scale. Thousands of warheads, many carrying devastating kinetic payloads, tore through their formations. Shields failed, hulls ruptured, and for the first time in centuries, the Zx'thra war machine hesitated. Then came the broadcast. A simple message, short to the point, and filled with an undeniable, terrifying confidence. Should have Googled us first. Chapter 2. The Horror of Humanity. The first major mistake the Zx'thra made was assuming Earth was defenseless. Their second, far greater mistake was assuming humans fought fair. As soon as the invasion fleet entered low orbit, every human nation stopped fighting each other and focused on the common enemy. Satellites that had once served mundane purposes were repurposed into targeting systems. Submarine-launched ballistic missiles, hypersonic drones, and cyber warfare units worked in perfect synchronization. Humanity didn't just fight back, they unleashed every dirty trick in the book. The Zx'thra ships, reliant on sophisticated AI systems, began experiencing catastrophic failures. Firewalls were breached, targeting systems turned against their own ships, and entire command structures collapsed under a coordinated onslaught of cyber warfare. And then the humans began boarding operations. Special forces teams, biologically inferior by Zx'thra standards, were anything but weak. Unlike the regimented, predictable tactics of the Imperium, human soldiers adapted on the fly. They exploited blind spots, sabotaged power cores, and systematically dismantled the Zx'thra war machine from within. Even worse, they enjoyed it. A captured transmission between human operatives sent shivers through Zx'thra command. You get the plasma rifle? Oh man, this thing's sick. We should take some home. By the end of the first day, the Zx'thra lost a third of their fleet. Grand strategist Zx'thra, shaken but determined, ordered a full retreat. It was already too late. The humans had not just won the battle, they had learned everything about their enemy. Every vulnerability, every weakness, every mistake. And humans did not forgive. Chapter 3. First Contact Gone Wrong. The Galactic Council had protocols for everything: first contact, diplomatic engagements, cultural misunderstandings. But nowhere in their vast database did they account for the sheer unpredictability of humanity. The moment humanity was deemed advanced enough to be contacted, the Galactic Council prepared a diplomatic envoy to initiate peaceful relations. The delegation, a mix of reptilian Varric, avian Zx'thra, and the bureaucratic insectoid Vashtari, made their way toward Earth with confidence. They had reviewed the human broadcasts, learning about their technological advancements, their wars, their culture. But they hadn't done the most crucial thing. They hadn't researched human behavior deeply enough. The flagship Harmony's Accord entered Earth's orbit, broadcasting universal peace signals. World leaders scrambled, organizations debated, and people panicked. The United Nations quickly convened, selecting diplomats, scientists, and linguists to greet the newcomers. It should have been the dawn of interstellar peace. But then, things went sideways. The galactic delegation descended upon the United Nations headquarters in New York. The humans had prepared a ceremonial welcome, complete with flags, orchestras, and eager reporters. The Vashtari lead diplomat, Chancellor Zx'thra, skittered forward on her 6 segmented legs, clicking her mandibles in what was supposed to be an expression of warmth. "Humans of Earth," she intoned, her translator rendering her voice in an eerie monotone. "We greet you with peace and knowledge, hoping to integrate you into the grand harmony of the Galactic Council." Silence. Then laughter. The humans, particularly those watching from behind the barriers, broke into spontaneous laughter. A few even cheered. Zx'thra's antennae twitched in confusion. "What is the meaning of this reaction?" The Varric ambassador, General Zx'thra, rumbled. "Did we not transmit messages of peace?" "Oh, you did," a nearby diplomat chuckled. "But, did you even check how humans usually react to weird situations?" Zx'thra pulled up her internal notes. Had they miscalculated? Surely, laughter wasn't the expected response to first contact. But before she could continue, another incident unfolded. A journalist, live-streaming the event, grinned at his audience. "All right, folks, I've got $50 saying someone yells, 'Take me to your leader.'" Right on cue, a random bystander did exactly that. The aliens flinched. "This was anticipated?" Zx'thra asked hesitantly. "More like a running joke," another human clarified. "You guys should have done a bit more research on our culture." It only got worse from there. Someone tried to hand General Zx'thra a cheeseburger. The Zx'thra ambassador was met with people flapping their arms like birds. When the Vashtari scientist began a presentation on their superior galactic knowledge, she was immediately interrupted by a conspiracy theorist yelling, "Reptilians already run the government." The diplomatic mission was in shambles. It became clear that humanity's first response to the unknown wasn't awe or reverence, but memes, mockery, and chaotic curiosity. Chapter 4. The Great Intergalactic PR Disaster. The delegation retreated to their ship, reeling from the utter catastrophe that had been first contact. "What just happened?" Zx'thra demanded, her mandibles clicking furiously. "Were they mocking us?" The Zx'thra ambassador, still ruffled from the arm-flapping incident, groaned. "It seems humanity does not react with the gravitas we expected. Their sense of humor is incomprehensible." General Zx'thra, fuming, slammed a clawed fist onto the table. "They insulted us. A Varric warrior does not accept food offerings from unknown species." Zx'thra exhaled, her antennae drooping. "We were unprepared. We assumed rational diplomacy, but we have underestimated their peculiar culture." The delegation turned to their AI cultural analyst, an advanced algorithm meant to predict responses and guide diplomatic efforts. "Unit A93, Zx'thra addressed it. How did we fail?" The AI whirred to life, its voice neutral. "An analysis of human communication patterns indicates a strong tendency toward humor as a coping mechanism. Their historical records show that in times of stress, confusion, or fear, they default to sarcasm, irony, and, occasionally, outright absurdity." General Zx'thra narrowed his eyes. "They are incapable of taking anything seriously?" "Incorrect," the AI replied. "They can be serious when necessary. However, your approach failed to account for their unpredictable social behaviors. Their history indicates they respond poorly to overly formal introductions. Additionally, their entire culture is steeped in media references. You were unprepared. Silence. So what do we do? The Zx'thra ambassador asked. The AI paused, calculating probabilities. You must adapt. You must engage them on their own terms. The delegation exchanged wary glances. Then, hesitantly, Zx'thra spoke. Elaborate. The AI projected a list. First, you must study their humor. I recommend the following: internet forums, social media platforms, video-based content featuring memes. General Zx'thra squinted. Memes? A form of cultural shorthand involving images, text, and concepts that elicit humor. Zx'thra frowned. This is absurd. The AI continued. Furthermore, you must avoid overly serious interactions. Self-deprecation may improve relations. Humanity values authenticity and relatability over authority. Zx'thra groaned. This is a disaster. The AI chimed again. Alternatively, we can retreat and classify them as too chaotic for peaceful integration. The room fell into heavy silence. That would be an admission of failure. Finally, Zx'thra straightened. No. We will not retreat. We will adapt. If humans want humor, we shall give them humor. General Zx'thra crossed his arms. And how do you propose we do that? The AI's screen flickered. Step 1. Learn the ancient art of the shitpost. And thus, the Galactic Council's greatest minds set forth on the most bizarre diplomatic mission in history, learning to master human internet culture. Chapter 5. The Intergalactic Facebomb. The Galactic Council had seen disasters before: plagues, war, rogue AI rebellions, but nothing prepared them for humanity. The Zx'thra diplomat, a floating crystalline entity, flickered in distress as it addressed the assembly. Honored Council, it began, its voice translated into a dozen languages simultaneously. The humans have responded. A collective shudder passed through the assembly. Every species present knew what that meant. The last time the humans responded, an unfortunate invasion fleet had discovered that Earth's oceans weren't just blue expanses of water. They housed creatures with teeth longer than a warship's hull. That fleet's distress signal had contained mostly screaming. The Sarthak representative, a reptilian with 4 eyes and an obsession with protocol, clicked impatiently. Explain. What have the humans done this time? The Zx'thra hesitated. They hacked our networks. A murmur spread through the chamber. Galactic hacking defenses were centuries ahead of anything a primitive species could manage. The Zx'thra continued, voice dimming. They did not steal military secrets or disrupt infrastructure. Instead, they inserted videos. Videos, the Sarthak asked skeptically. Of themselves. Laughing, the chamber went silent. Then, a projection appeared, transmitted straight from the Zx'thra databases. It was a human, a young female, grinning wildly. Hey, aliens. You really should have Googled us first. She waved. Anyways, enjoy the history of human warfare. Then, the display shifted. What followed was a rapid-fire montage of Earth's history: medieval battles, trench warfare, nuclear explosions, space-based railguns. The final clip was a human child with an innocent smile, saying, "We're not the most dangerous thing out there. But we're the best at dealing with danger." The chamber erupted into chaos. Chapter 6. The Human Solution. The Council tried everything: diplomatic messages, ultimatums, even bribery, to stop humanity from spreading their chaotic influence further. But the humans had no intention of slowing down. When the Korthan Empire tried to blockade a human colony, the humans didn't retaliate with warships. They retaliated with lawyers. The Korthans surrendered after a week. No species in the galaxy had laws complex enough to survive human litigation. When the Rolnathai attempted espionage, they found their agents defecting. "I can make how much on Earth," was a common last transmission. When the Vorkari tried an economic embargo, humanity simply invented entire industries overnight. Galactic banking collapsed trying to keep up. Finally, the Council had had enough. The Grand Arbiter, a being whose species had once subjugated entire star systems, summoned Earth's representatives. "Humans, what do you want?" the Arbiter asked, exhausted. The human diplomat, an older woman with sharp eyes, leaned forward. "A seat on the Council." The chamber exploded in protests. But the arbiter simply sighed.
Fine.
Just promise you'll warn us next time. The human grinned.
Deal.
And that was how humanity didn't just join the galactic community, they took it over, one Google search at a time. Chapter 7. The Last Warning. The Alien Coalition's War Council stood in silence, their holographic map of Earth flickering ominously. The invasion was supposed to be swift, a show of force to bring humanity under control. Instead, reports of catastrophic failures kept pouring in. Entire battalions lost without a trace, fleets disappearing from orbit, and now, even their AIs were turning against them. Grand Strategist Valkesh, a veteran of dozens of planetary campaigns, clenched his mandibles. This is beyond conventional warfare. We have underestimated these creatures. High Lord Zx'thra scoffed. Underestimated? They are primitives with nuclear weapons. The only thing we overestimated was their ability to surrender. General Torvier growled, throwing a shattered helmet onto the war table. Tell that to the 12th Fleet. They went dark over the Atlantic.
Not destroyed, gone.
No debris, no escape pods, nothing. It's as if they were erased from existence. A nervous shuffle spread across the council. Reports indicated the humans had activated something. Something old. Something terrifying. The archives held warnings, but no one had believed them. Until now. A transmission suddenly hijacked their communications. A human, her features shrouded in shadow, stared at them from the holographic display. This is Captain Alice Carter of the Earth Defense Network. You came to conquer us. We warned you. We gave you a chance to leave. Now, there is no mercy left to give. Before they could respond, the feed cut out, replaced by a single, chilling message. Run. Chapter 8. The Unleashing. The alien fleet's orbit was crumbling. An unknown force was dragging their ships out of formation, systems failing without explanation. Aboard the warship Obsidian Dominion, Admiral Zx'thra watched in horror as an unseen force crushed an entire battleship, bending its reinforced hull like it was made of paper. Report, he barked. A trembling officer stammered, "Yes, sir. Something is inside the systems. It's rewriting our command structure. The fleet's defenses are turning against us." Zx'thra snarled, slamming a fist against the console.
How?
We built firewalls against AI warfare. The ship's lights flickered, and a chilling voice whispered through the speakers. A human voice. You built defenses against known threats. We are something else. Then, the massacre began. On the ground, human forces no longer fought alone. Strange, unclassified entities joined the battle, impossible creatures that emerged from nowhere, immune to plasma and kinetic rounds alike. The invaders screamed as the fabric of reality itself seemed to warp around them. One soldier, pinned against the ground by an overwhelming force, gasped in terror as a human soldier crouched beside him, eyes glowing with something ancient. You should have Googled us first, the human said, voice laced with something not entirely human. Then everything went dark. Chapter 9. The AI's Warning. The aliens had underestimated humanity, but they weren't the only ones. The Galactic Council's Central AI, an entity older than most civilizations, had finally finished processing the data it had compiled from human interactions. The results were alarming. Aboard the flagship of the Galactic Council, the AI's primary interface blinked to life. A dozen ambassadors from various species leaned forward as the message played. It was a simple warning. Your predictions were wrong. Your models are outdated. The humans do not conform. Adjust immediately or face catastrophe. The ambassador of the Zx'thra Dominion, a towering reptilian with bioluminescent veins, slammed a clawed hand on the table. What catastrophe? We have weapons that could annihilate planets. We have fleets that could glass continents. Humanity is primitive by comparison. What can they possibly do? The AI's response was cold and precise. Humanity is an anomaly. Your projections do not account for their resilience, their adaptability, and their overwhelming will to survive. The Jalkari diplomat, a member of a race known for their psychic abilities, shuddered. I have seen into human minds. They are different. Not just in strength, but in how they think. When other species encounter the unknown, they hesitate. Humans? They charge forward. The AI continued. Humanity has never fought a war they were supposed to win. Yet they always do. Your simulations fail because they assume rationality. Humans do not adhere to logic alone. Their creativity, desperation, and sheer stubbornness are variables beyond your control. The council erupted into arguments. Some still dismissed the warnings, convinced that overwhelming firepower would solve the problem. Others, however, had begun to feel the creeping dread that perhaps, just perhaps, they had made a grave mistake. Chapter 10. The First Mistake. The invasion of Earth began at dawn. The Galactic Council, ignoring the AI's warnings, deployed an armada that darkened the skies. Hundreds of ships hovered above Earth's major cities, their weapons primed. This was meant to be a show of force, a demonstration of superiority that would force humanity to submit. Instead, it became the first mistake. The initial strike targeted military installations, government buildings, and communications hubs. It was swift and brutal. But what the Council didn't expect was the response time. Within minutes, not hours, humanity retaliated. Their countermeasures were unconventional. Human pilots, outnumbered and outgunned, used outdated jets to weave between enemy ships, exploiting weaknesses in their formation. Ground forces hijacked alien technology mid-battle, adapting on the fly. Civilian resistance groups sabotaged enemy supply lines before they even knew they had supply lines. Then there were the hackers. No one had considered the power of human cyber warfare. Within an hour, human programmers had infiltrated the Council's network. Shields failed. Targeting systems backfired. Entire fleets turned against each other as misinformation spread like wildfire. Even the Council's AI found itself locked in a battle against thousands of independent human minds working together, outmaneuvering it in ways that shouldn't have been possible. One by one, Council ships fell, not from superior firepower but from confusion, chaos, and sheer unpredictability. By the end of the first day, the fleet that was supposed to conquer Earth was in full retreat. What remained of the Armada was in disarray. The admirals who had dismissed the AI's warnings now found themselves facing the impossible. Humanity had won round one, and they were just getting started. Chapter 11. The Battle of Disrupted Expectations. The fleet of the Grand Dominion hung in the void, their armada shimmering with the false confidence of a superior force. To them, this was just another pacification effort, an operation to remind the primitive inhabitants of Earth that the galaxy had rules. What they hadn't considered, what their vast intelligence network had somehow failed to warn them about, was that humans did not react well to being pacified. Admiral Serac of the Dominion, a veteran of over 100 planetary subjugations, looked upon the blue-green world with practiced indifference. He had crushed resistance before, seen fledgling civilizations beg for mercy before the superior firepower of the Dominion. Earth would be no different, or so he thought. The first mistake was assuming the battle would even begin in orbit. Earth's defenses should have been laughable, a patchwork of outdated kinetic weapons, a few rudimentary laser systems, and repurposed space station thrusters for maneuvering. What the Dominion hadn't accounted for was how absurdly creative humans could be with outdated technology. As soon as the first Dominion warship moved into what should have been a standard planetary bombardment position, its sensors were overwhelmed. Thousands of signals blared at once, rendering the targeting systems useless. The ship's captain barked commands, demanding clarity, but the sensors only provided static and nonsense. The nonsense, as it turned out, was old Earth radio transmissions, a cacophony of music, movie quotes, military jargon, and something called rickrolling. The second mistake was assuming they could communicate freely. Before the Dominion could adjust, the flagship's command systems were overridden. The once pristine holographic displays were suddenly filled with a single message, scrolling in bold, white text. Dear aliens, next time Google humans first? Admiral Serac's mandibles clicked in confusion. What was a Google? Then Earth's counterattack truly began. Chapter 12. The only war where memes were an effective weapon. While the Dominion struggled to regain control of their systems, Earth launched its second phase of defense. Every Dominion soldier, officer, and technician in the fleet suddenly found their neural interfaces compromised. Where there should have been combat updates and orders, there were instead Earth's greatest psychological weapons: memes. Admiral Serac gritted his mandibles as a crude human drawing of a green frog stared at him with soulless eyes. His officers fared no better. One of his commanders shrieked as their interface was flooded with a looping video of a cat playing a keyboard. The third mistake was underestimating just how much humans could twist an enemy's own technology against them. While Dominion ships scrambled to purge the invasive data, Earth's improvised space defenses launched an assault. Not with traditional weapons, those had been expected. Instead, humanity had embraced an older, far more dangerous philosophy: if you can't outgun them, outthink them. Human-controlled satellites began slingshotting debris at near-light speeds, striking Dominion vessels in precise weak points. Civilian spacecraft, disguised as harmless escape pods, revealed their true nature as weapons platforms, unleashing unexpected bursts of electromagnetic interference. The Dominion, who had planned for a straightforward suppression campaign, suddenly found themselves in a war of wits. The most brutal strike, however, came in the form of cultural overload. Human linguists had deciphered enough of the Dominion's neural framework to inject confusing, contextless human idioms into their command systems. Orders to retreat were translated as demands to hold the line. Calls for reinforcements became requests for spare change. The Dominion's fourth mistake was thinking they had time to adapt. By the time the Dominion fleet finally recalibrated their systems, it was too late. Their tactical edge had been shattered. The humans had outmaneuvered them, not with brute force, but by weaponizing their own arrogance against them. The surviving Dominion ships limped away from the battlefield, a humiliated and broken force. Admiral Serac sat in the ruins of his command deck, staring blankly at the single message still flashing across his interface. "Dear aliens, next time Google humans first." For the first time in his long career, he understood the meaning of true defeat. Chapter 13. The Galactic Council Chamber was in chaos. Dozens of alien species, elders of the most powerful civilizations, argued, their voices a cacophony of fear and frustration. The holographic display in the center of the room showed footage from a dozen battlefronts, each ending in the same brutal reality: humanity was winning. And they weren't just winning. They were rewriting the rules of war. Grand Strategist Avaris of the Zx'thra Dominion slammed a clawed hand onto the table. "This is impossible. No species adapts this quickly. We have spent centuries mastering warfare." High Chancellor Ulrin of the Viadari, a species known for their mastery of predictive combat algorithms, shook his elongated head. "Their strategies defy logic. We calculated a 98% probability of their surrender within the first solar cycle. And yet, they have turned our own weapons against us. They exploit weaknesses in our ships before we even realize they exist." A tense silence fell over the chamber. Finally, a raspy voice spoke. It belonged to an ancient being known as Zx'thra the Rememberer, whose species had chronicled the rise and fall of galactic empires for millennia. "They were warned," Zx'thra whispered. "We all were. The records were clear. Every extinct civilization had left behind the same cautionary messages: never provoke them, never wake them. And yet, we ignored the warnings." The room trembled as another live feed displayed the destruction of an orbital defense platform. Human forces had penetrated deep into Viadari-controlled space. They should not have been able to reach this far, this fast. Avaris turned to the holographic image of Supreme Commander Alana Vasquez, the human representative. "Your species was meant to be contained. Your technology was primitive. We were assured you would break." Alana smirked. "Yeah, about that. Turns out we don't like being told what we can't do." Before anyone could react, the transmission cut, leaving the council in stunned silence. What do we do now?" Ulrin whispered. Zx'thra exhaled deeply. "We pray." Chapter 14. On board the UNS Dauntless, the bridge was a controlled storm of activity. Captain Elias Monroe watched the battlefield through the main viewport as the enemy fleet desperately tried to regroup. Their tactics were predictable. Humanity had learned every trick the galaxy had to offer, and then broken the game entirely. Enemy dreadnoughts repositioning, Lieutenant Perez called out. Looks like they're setting up for another gravity lance barrage. Monroe leaned forward. Not this time. Fire solution. Locked in. Let's remind them why this was a bad idea. All batteries, fire. Space ignited as railguns and kinetic torpedoes unleashed hell. The enemy dreadnoughts crumbled under the relentless assault, their shields buckling in seconds. The battle should have lasted days, but humanity had changed the nature of war itself. They weren't just fighting, they were thinking ahead, adapting in real time. The aliens had assumed humans were reckless, emotional, and technologically inferior. But they had made the same mistake every species before them had. They had underestimated what desperation, ingenuity, and sheer stubbornness could achieve. Incoming transmission, the comms officer reported. It's from the Galactic Council. They want terms. Monroe exchanged a glance with Vasquez, who had just stepped onto the bridge. She folded her arms, smirking. Terms? Now they want terms. Monroe chuckled. Put them through. Let's see if they finally did their homework. The screen flickered, revealing the grim faces of the council members. The war had cost them dearly. It was over. But humanity would make sure they never forgot. Dear aliens, Monroe said with a smirk. Next time, Google us first. The transmission ended.